हेलो एंड वेलकम टू बायजूस IAS। बायजूस IAS में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। सो आई होप ऑल ऑफ यू आर डूइंग वेल एंड as you know, on a daily basis, every day the first thing in the morning that we do is to discuss the articles of the Hindu newspaper. A very, very important session for each one of you, and I, on behalf of my entire team, thank you for supporting us in this entire cause, because at the end of the day, it is done for your benefit. So when we talk about the newspaper articles, the articles are extremely important in terms of knowing the entire news from the civil services point of view and other examinations held by various commissions and agencies, even regulatory bodies. So any exam you are appearing for that has current affairs as a part of its scope is important, and these current affairs would be important for that part of the examination, right? So as you can see, the 14th of April 2024, we are doing a lot of stuff, we are doing multiple things, and the articles that I'm going to discuss with you today are these. So as you can see, the topics, there are 5 important topics. We have varied types of news. We have climate related news, we have health related news, we have national issue related news, and we have international relations issue related news. All of these news articles are highly important, and you will find it interesting when we do a specific take on these news articles. So when I say that a specific take on the news articles would be done, what exactly do I mean by that? How do we understand them? How do we associate with them? Let's have a look. So as you can see the headline, it says 17 Indians aboard Israeli cargo vessel seized by Iran. We are talking about the Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Now there might be multiple questions. Your mind would be convoluted as to why did Iran seize a cargo, seize a vessel which had Indians aboard? Because Iran and India maintain very good relations. So what is it that we are targeting, and how do we overcome this? Let's understand. So issue number 1, there are multiple issues. First, I would highlight those issues, and then you will be able to understand better as to which issue does India have to address and which issue is going on around that area where the vessels are being taken over by Irani Revolutionary Guard, right? The first issue is of piracy. When we talk about the issue of piracy, it is Somali pirates or Somalian pirates. Somalian pirates, they take over the vessel. It can be called a vessel, a cargo, or a ship. It can be taken over by a vessel or a cargo. It can take over a vessel, a cargo, or a ship. Basically, it takes it over. It takes control over that ship, and then they can demand ransom for the human lives, for the lives on board, and they can demand multiple things. They can probably rob the entire ship, or rob the entire consignment. All of these things are important. So these are things which are a part of the piracy operations. Now these piracy operations are conducted by Somalians primarily. This falls under the Horn of Africa. I will just show you that entire region. Alright, this is the first issue. The second issue is the Red Sea issue. Within the Red Sea, there is a lot of turbulence which has been going on because of Israel, you can say Gaza, Hamas, and the support provided to Gaza or Hamas by Iran. Iran provides support to Gaza or Hamas, and the issue is between Israel and Iran. This issue has come into play. Now because of this particular issue, the trading, the import-export, the trade, the purchase-sale, the movement of ships that happens in and out via that entire region, via the Red Sea region, comes under threat. And when you threaten the entire region, it is not just the Israeli ships or the Iranian ships that come under threat. The ships from all the entire part of the world that are trading via that route, all of them, they automatically come under threat. So let me show you the region. Look at this map. When you see this map, look at this map. Here is Iran. This is a part of the entire Middle East. You can see here there is Saudi Arabia, this is UAE, this is Yemen, here is Oman, so Iraq, Syria. So this is on top, this entire portion, as we call it, the Middle East. Here you can see this primary objective or this particular entry next to Yemen. This is called Gulf of Aden, ADEN, Gulf of Aden. This entire portion, as you can see, is the Red Sea region. It is highlighted over here. This gap over here in between. This is termed as the Red Sea region. Here lies Gaza, and above Gaza is Israel. This is Israel. The conflict that started on the 7th of October was between Israel and a militant faction within Gaza called as Hamas. So this entire war had started, or the militancy had started between these two regions. Because of this militancy, it was observed that Hamas, a militant organization, Hamas is like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hamas is like Jamaat-ud-Dawa, right? So, militant terrorist organization, these organizations are supported by Iran. Iran supports these organizations. Now, in order to restrict trade with Israel, what have they done? They've taken over Gulf of Aden and the entire Red Sea region. Red Sea region is very, very popular for trade. Trade with the Middle East. We are talking about trade with KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, West Bank, Syria, and this part of Africa, the eastern part of Africa, this entire region. This trade has been taken over, which impacts vessels from other countries as well, which is pretty obvious. It impacts vessels from other countries. Now correlate this entire issue with the Horn of Africa. The Horn of Africa is not shown entirely, but it is somewhere over here. Horn of Africa has 4 countries, right? One of those countries is Somalia. The other countries are Djibouti, Eritrea. You need to know this for prelims. It might be asked in geography mapping, which are the 4 countries that are a part of Horn of Africa. So often it is said that Somalian pirates are hired to take over the vessels which are actually operating in this area. So it's a kind of a camaraderie between multiple countries, just to make sure that the other country suffers, just to make sure that things don't go smoothly for the other country. So now what has happened is that they have captured a ship which has 17 Indians aboard. Why are we discussing all of this? Why are we discussing this issue? These two issues that we have discussed over here, they are correlated. How are they correlated? That the ship that has been captured in the Red Sea area, in this entire area, has 17 Indians aboard. It has crew members. They are basically crew members who are aboard. Now those 17 crew members are Indians, which is why we have to basically see that those Indians come back home safely via diplomatic channels. It has been taken over by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and this ship is by the name of MSC Aries. Let me show it to you and let's discuss. Iranian Revolutionary Guard seized the container vessel means a ship, MSC Aries, in the Gulf of Hormuz. This is the Persian Gulf region. Vessel was sailing from the UAE to India. 17 out of 25 crew members were Indians, along with Filipinos, Pakistanis, Russian and 1 Estonian. Indian officials are in touch with Iranian authorities, obviously, to get our own citizens back. Now, this is not something new for India. We have been conducting these operations in order to rescue our people from such kind of ships. If you remember, yesterday only I discussed this term rescue, but that was in context of animals, fauna. Here it is in context of people who are captured by pirates or by other countries' Revolutionary Guard or the naval operations. So the naval operations are conducted, the last one being called Operation Sankalp. Operation Sankalp was a highly successful operation that continued for over 100 days to rescue the Indian crew. Aimed at countering piracy, we have to counter piracy, completed 100 days with significant naval presence and surveillance efforts, basically to figure out where the piracy has happened or where our ships are taken over by the pirates. Second to it, we have to rescue the people who have been taken over by the pirates. Primarily done by Somali pirates, as we had discussed, and they are active piracy in the Gulf of Aden and the Horn of Africa. This is in this region only, as I discussed, in this entire region. This region is the Indian Ocean region. Indian Navy deployed over 5,000 personnel, 21 ships and maritime surveillance aircraft to address maritime threats. Maritime threats need to be addressed. So these are two things which are different from each other, but over here they are correlated. How are they correlated? Because of the kind of naval response that we look at in this particular case. Now this ship has been taken over. This ship has been taken over by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It basically impacts India-Iran relations. But of late, we are talking about Israel and Iran. A possible war, a possible conflict. As we speak right now, last night Iran attacked Israel, or they had initiated an attack. Whether it led to loss of lives or whether it led to a full-blown war, that is yet to be seen. But this is something that has started. This would be discussed in detail in tomorrow's newspaper. But this is what has started in a limited capacity. When we talk about this, Israel plus national security of US is thinking of how to counter Iran. Foe of a foe is a friend. Enemy of an enemy is a friend, which is why Israel and US in this particular case are friends, because US is also anti-Israel due to Iran's nuclear enrichment program, and obviously Israel is anti-Iran because Iran is supporting Hamas in Gaza. This war has already started. Now India in this particular entire scheme of things is coming into play because the kind of vessels that we operate between India and Israel, they are taken over by the Iranian authorities. And looking at that, if they are taken over by the Iranian authorities, those vessels have to be controlled by India. I mean, their bone of contention is, why are you trading with Israel? Why are you concerned if we trade with Israel? This is the biggest question. So Israel and US have been preparing for possible missile and drone attacks by Iran on its proxies. They are prepared and this has already initiated. So MSC Ares is owned by Zodiac Maritime and chartered to the Mediterranean Shipping Company, which is why this is called MSC. Israel's minister called the seizure. Seizure means you have seized this vessel, a pirate operation, and urged sanctions against Iran. And this kind of sanction is imposed on Iran or will be imposed on Iran only when countries like India stop buying oil from Iran. This seizure is not taken in a positive light by any of the countries. The White House National Security Council condemned the seizure as a violation of the international law, because this seizure is not done by pirates. Had it been done by pirates, no country would have taken responsibility. But who has done this? This has been done by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which goes against the rules of UN clause. US Secretary of Defense discussed urgent regional threats with Israeli minister and reiterated support for Israel's defense. So look at this. Indian crew members aboard on a ship which is owned by Maritime Shipping Company has been taken over by Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Support is provided by US to Israel against Iran. And who has been caught in the middle? Indians have been caught in the middle. This is the entire scheme of things, right? So what is not important in this right now? The piracy, the Somali pirate is not important, because this ship, this particular vessel has not been taken over by the Somali pirates. So it is supposed to be seen, and there would be developments now on a daily basis about the tiff between Iran and Israel. So let's wait for that. I hope you enjoyed this article, long article. Now we come to GS3 environment. So what is it when we are talking in terms of environment? How do we look at it? How do we understand it? Let's have a look. So here we are talking about impact of climate change. There are two articles in fact. Impact of climate change. Can you please tell me what are the various impacts of climate change that are seen? What are the various impacts that we see with respect to climate change? Yes. What happens due to climate change? Let's list it one by one. The first is a heat wave. what India is experiencing, northern part of India is experiencing right now. Followed by that, excessive floods. Floods means that it spoils the entire produce, it takes over, it spoils the entire infrastructure. This is something which is done, floods. Followed by that, vulnerability to the weather, where it leads to depletion of the ozone layer, it leads to excessive carbon, it leads to multiple health issues for the people who are living on planet Earth. Yes, whether it's a heat wave or it's a flood or vulnerability, or let's say even drought for that matter, drought, sukha. This is what happens. So when these kind of things happen, all of these things are a result of climate change. Now you might say that one is associated with the other, one is linked to the other. So all of these things are related to what? They are related to global warming. So when you say that the ozone is being depleted, it is resulting into what? It is resulting into excessive global warming. Emissions of carbon dioxide have increased. They are resulting into global warming. It is resulting into a drought-like situation also. It might result into floods also in certain regions. It is definitely resulting into a heat wave. All these are impacts of climate change. Looking at the impacts of climate change, what are we actually doing in order to resolve them? So there have been certain studies over decades. So right from 1970s to 80s, 10-year period, 1 decade, 1970 to 1980, 1980 to 1990, 90 to 2000, 2000 to 2020 and counting. Over the past 40 to 50 years, what have been the changes of climate change? What have been the changes or the impacts of climate change because of all these things, because of all these impacts, because of all these regions? How do we look at the impact? There has been certain terms that have come into play. So when we are talking about a certain heat wave, we also correlate the rise in the sea level, and that has been given a specific term which this study in particular is talking about. So let's have a look at the headline: concurrent heat waves, sea level rises pose a threat to coastlines. So all the states, especially the establishments close to the coastlines, because India has a long coastline, you already know, India has a long coastline. Looking at this coastline, the habitations which are close to the sea, all of them are what? They are threatened. All 8 to 9 states, they are threatened. They are huge time threatened. And this impact we have already seen through the cyclones that have impacted the coast of West Bengal, the coast of Odisha, the coast of Gujarat, the coast of Maharashtra. This is something that we have already seen. So let's have a look. What are we talking about? Look at the new term, definition of CHWESL. What is this? You need to remember this for prelims as well as mains. Concurrent heat wave and extreme sea level. Concurrent heat wave and extreme sea level event is when both a heat wave and an extreme short-term sea level. Heat wave and along with that, short-term sea level rise. The sea level is rising. Obviously, it's a threat for the people who are living on the coast. Occur at the same time, same coastal locations simultaneously. And this is a hugely threatening situation which has been observed over the past 3 to 5 decades. Have a look at this. The sea level rise significantly increased between 1998 and 2017, 2 decades compared to the preceding 20 years. So we are comparing these 20 years to the preceding 20 years. These events may be 5 times more likely to occur between 2025 to 49, which are the next 20 years under high emission scenario, because nobody actually bothers about emissions. You only talk about fairy tales, you only talk about controlling and these fancy conferences, meetings and UN and what all schemes that have been done by these fancy organizations across the world. But do you actually care about these things on the ground is the big question. So when we talk about the methodology which has been implemented to figure out the impact, let's have a look. 88% of the world's coastlines experienced a CHWESL. So this is not just an Indian phenomena. This is a global phenomena, and it is a global phenomena where 88% of the coastlines out of 100, 88 countries are facing this problem. event during 1979 to 2017, over a 4-decade period. So this is not something which is an Indian phenomenon. This is a global problem. So it means that emissions are not being taken care of at a global level. Around 39% of coastlines recorded a significant increase in the total duration of these conditions between 98 to 2017 compared to 1979 to 1998, with tropical regions experiencing a greater increase, because tropical regions have the evaporation and have those condensation at the same time, and plus it results into heat. So which is why there is more evaporation, more rainfall. It might exacerbate the coastline experience. The research and projection methodology has been conducted by Hong Kong Polytechnic University. The future events in the next 25 years were projected under a high emission scenario, which means that the world is still not gone into controlling the high emissions. The events occurring in the extended summer season in the northern hemisphere and winter season in southern hemisphere were included. And this is something which is a highly concerning thing for the entire world. It is not just for us Indians, it is for the entire world. So knowing everything, knowing the last 20-year analysis and the 20-year analysis before that, in totality 40-year analysis, have we done anything about it? Has India in particular done anything to control it, is the big question. So India enacted certain laws. It's not that we have not done the effort. This is something which is a very good point. We have definitely done efforts. We have definitely done multiple things with respect to it. We have enacted it on paper. And there's a very popular scheme of things which was taken way back. It's not right now. It was done in 2008. The name of this scheme was National Action Plan for Climate Change, NAPCC. National Action Plan for Climate Change. This plan or the scheme of things came about in 2008, and these are governmental efforts to address the problems which would be created by climate change. So this particular plan has 8 submissions. It was enacted having 8 submissions, where practically it took care of almost every kind of problem that climate change can pose. It's not just one problem. It's not just about carbon emission. It's also about how to regulate it in a fashion where you have more sustainable things that don't result into climate change or that save the country from climate change. So it's not a short-term vision that we have, that the government of India has enacted. It's actually a long-term vision. So I will just explain this to you. The problem is that this was enacted in 2008. The scheme of things, these 8 submissions came into effect in 2008. We are sitting in 2024. We still don't have, or right now in the last 4 or 5 years, we have started to acting on certain missions out of these 8 missions. It is still not highly effective, which means that mostly the things were on paper. They were not in action. They were not taken in action, and this is actually the biggest problem for every country, including India, that what you have done on paper and what actions are we seeing, they are not in consonance, they are not in sync. Let's have a look. So when we are talking about steps taken by India to combat climate change, the biggest step is NAPCC. Full form is National Action Plan on Climate Change, right? Established by Indian government to address climate change comprehensively. So on paper, this is a perfect scheme. That is an umbrella of 8 missions. It comprises 8 missions focusing on various aspects of climate change, mitigation and adaptation. So climate change mitigation, we have to mitigate it and we have to adapt according to the new conditions that have been created. So have a look at these missions. You have to memorize all these missions. These have been asked in the examinations in the past, and you need to know these missions because, like for example, excessive focus is on National Solar Mission, also called as National Solar Mission. So Government of India is making renewable energy effective according to this mission, National Solar Mission. This is good. National Solar Mission, so you should know which scheme are we talking about. When we are talking about National Solar Mission, it's a part of National Action Plan for Climate Change. National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. Energy efficiency has to be done in a proper fashion. Efficient energy, you have to enhance energy in an efficient fashion, but at the same time, this should not be there should be sustainable energy, not thermal energy or not this type of energy. National water mission, clean water, provision of clean water. National mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem, highly important. It is resulting into melting of ice and lowering of the ice caps on the Himalayas. National mission on sustainable habitat. Habitat should be sustainable. On strategic knowledge for climate change, highly important. This is something that we now possess. At that time when we had enacted the scheme, we did not. National mission for a green India. National mission for sustainable agriculture. This is also a very popular scheme, but we have not been able to effect it properly. Sustainable agriculture, green India, knowledge for climate change, sustainable habitat, Himalayan ecosystem, water mission, energy efficiency and national solar mission. 8 sub-missions under National Action Plan for Climate Change. So when we are talking about all these things, this is something which is required now more than ever. Why? Because if we look at projected changes, the changes in 2025 to 2049, those changes are irreversible and they are more damaging than what changes had happened in the last 20 years. So have a look at projections for future. Global coastal areas could experience an average of 38 days of CHWESN, which means high heat wave and rising sea level intensity each year between 2025 to 2045. 38 days, which is a lot. It can result into loss of lives and loss of infrastructure, destruction of infrastructure compared to 7 days during 89 to 2013. So it was 7 and it has become more than 5 times. It's a big jump. Tropical areas are likely to be the most severely affected, and look at where India is located. It's a tropical country. So what do we call our climate? It's a tropical monsoon climate, particularly low or middle income countries. Low or middle income countries. This is what we are seeing. NAPCC. So I hope you understood this entire article, a good article. There is another article with respect to environment that we'll study after this. So here we are talking about another article. Are we experiencing another pandemic? Now this has an entirely different take with respect to COVID. You remember COVID? So we had experienced an outbreak of COVID. Earlier it was an endemic, then it turned into an epidemic, then it turned into a pandemic, right? So this is what we are experiencing now, that we are experiencing COVID in a different form, where we have come to know about multiple things with respect to COVID, right? So it's a misprint. This is important for GS2. GS2 has a topic, governance has a topic which says issues related to health. Issues related to health, right? We're talking about issues related to health. What is it that we are focusing upon in this particular article? So it's not about COVID, it's about long-term health impact on us due to COVID. Long-term health impact on us due to COVID. So what impact does it have on people? This is related to chronic illnesses, not COVID, but impact of COVID. So if someone was infected by COVID, COVID has been cured, the virus is out of your body, but we are not talking about that virus. The impact that virus has, it has created chronic illnesses. Look, we come to know about all these things when we are over with that, or when time has passed, like 2020-21, the big 2 waves of COVID, multiple variants, multiple mutations, the last one being Omicron. So all these things have happened. What has it led to? It has led to chronic illnesses in people, and they have been observed right now. And they are not easy things. They are multiple things with respect to new health problems, which are complicating problems. Like for example, the simplest or the most obvious one being loss of taste and smell permanently. Taste and smell have been lost. These senses have been lost permanently. Permanently in the sense, last 4 years, people have not been able to recover through these problems. So they have been experiencing new things. So lung infection, respiratory problems, breathing problems. As it is, we live in a very polluted environment. Over and above, we have respiratory problems. So these are those chronic illnesses that have been created amidst those people who were infected with COVID and who were even cured with COVID. So what are we seeing in this particular case is something which is highly troubling. Have a look. Tracking slow onset health issues post COVID-19 is difficult due to various factors. The slow onset of health issues, new health problems can arise without SARS-CoV-2 infection. Even if you are not infected with this virus, but still health problems which are a complicating measurement. What kind of health problems are we developing? So a certain study was conducted by JAMA Network Open, utilized US blood donor data to compare individuals with and without COVID-19. What did they come to know? Robust parameters were used in case of this. 43.3% of COVID-19 patients, which means people who were infected with COVID-19, experienced new symptoms lasting 4 weeks or longer compared to 22.1% without infection, which means people who were not infected, they must have become resistant, but still they were experiencing different kind of symptoms. 21.2% of those with COVID-19 had long-term health problems genuinely resulting from the infection. This is the entire problem. This is what this article is focusing upon. 21.2 who were infected with COVID-19. A significant number of COVID-19 survivors develop long-term health problems. So what kind of health problems are created? This is bigger than curing COVID-19. So one thing that is that we are cured from COVID-19. That is okay. COVID-19 has gone from our body. The virus has been removed. But what are the health problems that we can develop? It's a very big problem. Earlier, we were grappling COVID-19. Then people were grappling the side effects of vaccine. Now people are grappling the long-term health problems of COVID-19. Look at the problems we are also learning on the go. So long-term symptoms are neurological symptoms. Mental health of people is impacted. So mental health means that you are impacted because you were infected with COVID-19. It has impacted your mental health. Changes in taste or smell. This is something which is very basic. This is basic which has been happening since years. I met a homeopathic doctor. Let me give you an example. That doctor said that I have got patients who lost taste or smell completely. They regained their taste or smell after 2 years, after 3 years. And cardiac or respiratory symptoms were common. These things are very, very common. Cardiac symptoms, respiratory symptoms, neurological symptoms, mental health problems were reported by 12% of those with prior infection and 9.8% without. It has impacted people mentally, people who have lost their family, people who were infected, people who were constantly in the throes, whether we'll be alive or not. Right? Influenced by pandemic related factors. These are long-term symptoms that have created a mental health impact. So resolving long COVID and household pulse surveys, what we are talking about in this particular case is that look, COVID resolution probably has happened. Nowadays, so we don't even track how many COVID cases, how many COVID deaths. Long COVID resolves in a significant number of cases. Household surveys indicate that 10% of adults with prior infection still experienced long COVID symptoms, which are these symptoms that we have discussed. You have to remember them. Let me also tell you, the reported number of deaths via COVID-19, SARS, COVID-19 and multiple strains of the same virus. The actual figure reported, global figure is 7 million, which means 70 lakh people. The actual figure might be way higher. It can even be, even if it is 70 million, I won't be surprised that these many people have died. Over and above, if these many people have died, multiple more millions and millions of people have been heavily infected, and all those people have been infected via COVID-19 who have multiple of those who are being tested right now, surveyed right now, have developed these long-term symptoms. This is what has been happening. So studies from India show lower incidence of long COVID following Omicron infection compared to previous variants. We are showing lower incidence. Risk of long COVID increases with repeated infections according to AIIMS Bhubaneswar. Now this, okay, so the problem is that we are showing a lower incidence. Does that mean that we don't have those many incidences, or does that mean that we have not tested enough? If you keep testing, if you survey more people, probably you find more cases. But the point is the sample size of India is so huge that it is difficult to find out for so many people. The study did not measure antibodies at subsequent time points, that how many antibodies have been developed or not, potentially missing individuals infected afterwards. excluded individuals not healthy enough to donate blood, focusing on those with relatively mild outcomes. So these are the study limitations that have happened, that we have not observed this. Let me also tell you that the sample size of doing these studies are very small. Small sample size. You only take limited people. You don't take many people as a part of these studies. So this has been done. Now coming to another health article. So what is this health article focusing upon? Let's have a look. You know, India, this is again an interesting take. Not that I am propagating this particular thing, in no way it's a disclaimer, I am not propagating diseases. But the interesting take is, India is called the diabetic capital of the world. We are the diabetic capital. India is called the cancer capital of the world. Now India is also called the hepatitis capital of the world, right? We are talking about hepatitis B and C, because hepatitis A, we have a vaccine. So diabetic capital, cancer capital, and hepatitic capital, hepatitis B and C. Now this particular capital or hepatitis, it is a disease, it is a viral disease. So when we talk about this disease, it's a viral disease, infestation of virus in the body, hepatitis A, B and C. A has a vaccine, B now also has a vaccine, and C has a cure. But the point is, you should get to know about these viruses in advance. Only you would be able to treat them only when you know that this kind of virus is spreading. There are interesting takes on this. More than 50%, roughly 53% of the carriers of this virus are men. It can happen through common needles. It can happen through sexual contact with multiple partners, and it can happen through a host of other reasons which have blood transfusion involved, because it is blood to blood contact. It is not contagious, like it is not because of a normal viral infection like sneezing or coughing or touching the same cloth or same thing or same objectives. No, it's not that. So they are carriers, and most of these carriers don't know that they are carrying hepatitis B or C. This is a very big problem. So hepatitis is not just a sexually transmitted infection or a sexually transmitted disease. It is more than that. It can be attributed to intravenous objectives. That is what hepatitis is. So having this kind of an understanding, having this kind of an infestation of this particular virus, it is now becoming a pandemic. Now hepatitis is becoming a pandemic. We are talking about the vulnerability that the entire world has towards hepatitis B and C, and how vulnerable is India towards hepatitis B and C. So let's have a look. India accounted for 11.6% of the global viral hepatitis disease after China. So this was next only to China, and only 3 countries, China, India, and along with that South Africa, they constitute majority of the viral hepatitis cases, and 11 countries barely nearly 2/3 of the global burden of hepatitis B and C. 2/3, which means 67%. 67%, 2/3. What is the impact of the disease? Hepatitis B and C cause liver cirrhosis. Liver cirrhosis is also caused by excessive consumption of alcohol, by the way. Liver cancer, most viral hepatitis related deaths. Men constitute 50% of all hepatitis cases. Viral hepatitis is the second leading infectious cause of death globally, causing 1.3 million deaths annually. Just imagine, 1.3 million, 13 lakh deaths are caused by viral hepatitis only. When we talk in case of India, what is it that is contributing in case of India? India's vulnerability is high prevalence of chronic viral hepatitis B and C strains, often asymptomatic for decades. You don't get to know that you are infected. This is the biggest problem. This is why you pass it on to others, because if you get to know, then you will not pass it on. Otherwise, you will pass it on. Increasing prevalence of non-viral hepatitis forms like alcoholic liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it leads to these complications. Risky behavior such as drug use, sharing injections, multiple sexual partners contribute to higher cases among men, which is why more than 50%, approximately if you ask 58-57% of the men are infected with this particular viral strain, this particular infection. So the WHO has offered this report that viral hepatitis epidemiology, service coverage and product access, gaps in diagnosis and treatment coverage. This is the basic problem. Diagnosis, when do you diagnose? And once it is diagnosed, do you start the treatment? The gaps, falling below global targets for treating chronic hepatitis B and C by 2030. India offers low cost treatment due to availability of generic drugs. This is what India has been popular in, and we manufacture these drugs and we export them. Generic versions of drugs and government control programs. The government's viral hepatitis control program offers vaccines treatment to high risk adults. So vaccine, if you have, it's good. It's a preventive step. You also have treatment. So hepatitis B has a vaccine, hepatitis C has treatment. So this is something that calls for expanding access to testing and treatment, shifting to equitable policies, strengthening prevention efforts and improving funding. This is what is required to stop this epidemic from spreading, to stop multiple people from having these kind of diseases. We are talking about hepatitis B and C. A good article, a short and cute article. Next article we are talking about again from the environmental point of view. You know what the Supreme Court has ruled? Supreme Court has stated that climate change impacts human lives. Your and my life is affected because of climate change, which is why I have a right to be protected against climate change. Hence, it's a part of my right to life. It's a fundamental right under Article 21. Right to protect myself from impact of climate change. From impact of climate change. We have to protect ourselves from impact of climate change. Article 21. So we have to protect our human lives. This is what has to happen. And this ruling comes in the wake of a Supreme Court judgment that has correlated right to equality, Article 14, and Article 21, right to life. It has stated that all of us have a right to be protected against the adversities of climate change. So when we are talking about this, it has been linked to human rights. And this is something which has an international precedent around it, which means it has international references around it. The reference of Greta Thunberg, starting from Greta Thunberg, a Swedish resident who started a movement against these big climate change conferences, these big countries who just meet, they talk in English, they exchange fancy PPTs, they show presentations, and eventually it does not lead to anything. If it does not lead to anything, what is the use of conducting so many conferences if you are not taking any action? This international precedent has led to understanding the impact of climate change. So when we are trying to understand the impact of climate change that is impacting you and me, first we have to understand that what is the impact, which we discussed in the previous article today. So the impact of climate change is excessive heat wave. Heat wave impacts people like you and me. It makes us vulnerable with respect to possible health problems that we might contract. Followed by this, the problems that we are facing are rising sea levels. Then floods and droughts. These are not all the problems, but some of the problems that are seen as a part of this entire objective. So when we are looking at this, looking at all these problems, and it creates vulnerability in our brain and mind, we have to understand that how do we overcome this problem. So let's understand what the Supreme Court stated, and then let me explain to you the vulnerabilities. Supreme Court ruled that citizens have a right against adverse effects of climate change. In the case concerning deaths of Great Indian bustards due to solar power transmission lines. Environmentalists petitioned in 2019 for all overhead power lines to be shifted underground to prevent birds collision, because birds collide and then they die. While power companies argued that this would be expensive and impractical. The court formed an expert committee to determine which transmission line should go underground, emphasizing that underground electrification would hinder India's solar electrification goals. This is what we have to see. So look at this. First, implications of Supreme Court judgment on environmental matters often influence public discourse and government actions. Absolutely true. Because the court has said, when the court states, it becomes an obligation that now you have to follow. When the global conferences are talking about, it's not an obligation. But when the Supreme Court states and it gives a judgment, it becomes an obligation. The ruling may impact energy production strategies, particularly India's balance between coal plants and renewable energy sources. This balance we still not have been able to figure out that how this balance has to be created. With respect to renewable energy sources, we are working towards it, but this has not come into effect entirely right now. What is the possible impact that we are facing? Have a look. Rising vulnerabilities. Evidence for vulnerability of Indians to climate change is threatening. How? Floods leads to loss of lives and loss of livelihoods. Rainfall patterns are changing. Drought-like situation. Heat waves pose serious health risk. Several studies, including IPCC reports, have warned that global warming will put an increasing number of Indians at risk in the coming years. All these are vulnerabilities and problems. So we are looking at this severe impact on communities and culture. Indigenous communities such as tribals in ANI, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, depend on nature, and the relationship that indigenous communities have with nature may be tied to their culture or religion. They are tied to the culture, they are tied to the religion. Destruction of land and forest or the displacement from their homes. Obviously, this is called as loss of livelihoods. Land is getting destroyed by floods. My agricultural fields are getting destroyed because of floods. So it has displaced me. My house has been washed off. It has displaced me. This is the problem in a permanent loss of the unique culture. In these ways, climate change may impact constitutional guarantee. This is how it has been related to constitutional guarantees. So this is how we are linking climate change to human rights. Article 21 and Article 14, both fundamental rights are being impacted due to climate change. It's a very interesting take that climate change impacts human rights and Article 14 and 21 are violated, which is right to equality before the law, right to life and personal liberty. And this has come from the fact that we already have international precedents in place. All of us know about that, but it was highlighted by Greta Thunberg that a petition to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and Climate Activism by figures like Greta Thunberg have basically highlighted this. It's an international practice that we are talking about. This has come into play heavily. So here we come towards the end of the session. Have a look at the mains questions. Discuss the implications of global warming on coastal communities and environment, considering the broader context of climate change. So this is a question you can write, a very, very good question. Evaluate the role of transparent electoral systems in promoting political participation, ensuring accountability, fostering social cohesion. Illustrate your answer with examples from both historical and contemporary context, highlighting the consequences of electoral malpractices, democratic governance and citizen trust in political process. So transparent electoral systems, this is not an article entirely that we have done today, but this article can be covered with respect to the past knowledge of electoral bonds. This is a question that you can do from the knowledge that we have gained today. So today's newspaper has been not on the economic side, but on GS2 health side as well as climate change side. One news from the point of view of prelims, tribe Muria. Chukalapadu settlement, Alluri Sitarama Raju district, Andhra Pradesh, India. They are found in this particular settlement and district. It mandates that a man weaves a bamboo cradle, bass cradle called Vukada for his newborn as a lifetime memory for both the father and the child. Significance: each cradle symbolizes a child in the family, with the number of cradles indicating the total number of children born to the family. Preservation: once a child outgrows the cradle, it is preserved and not used for any other purpose. So it is preserved because it has an emotional value, plus it has a sentimental value attached, lifetime memory. So Kovasi Chukaya, a Muria tribal farmer, has woven cradles for birth his children as per tribal customs. So remember the name of the tribe, Muria. Where is it found? Andhra Pradesh, in this particular district. And the custom is that they weave bamboo cradles for newborn kids. So this is why it was in the news. So guys, here we come towards the end of the newspaper. We've discussed things in utmost detail, and I hope that you have enjoyed the newspaper today. This is how newspapers should be covered in proper utmost detail, and that is what leads to detailed understanding. So write in the comment section what more analysis would you like to see from us on YouTube, and other than that, what are your thoughts on the news articles that we have read today on climate change, on health, on governance, as well as on economy. Thank you so much everyone. Bye, take care and all the best.